Everybody, welcome. Welcome to the For the Love podcast. Hello.
Welcome.
Hi.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, we're happy you're here. I'm happy you're here.
Yeah, hi.
Something momentous is happening today with me and you, which is that we work together all the time now, but we haven't had like fun friend time together, and you're staying today.
I am.
After we finish on our fancy microphones with our fancy headsets, and we're going to just sit on the porch.
Have an actual conversation about
The rest of life.
the rest of life.
The stuff that we're not willing to tell the podcast just yet in our worlds. I'm so excited about that.
I know.
Also, let's check the weather because, yesterday...
It was so cold last night.
Okay, it got cold last night, but excuse me, yesterday was 82 degrees.
Yes.
And it is almost Thanksgiving. So that infuriates me, but today, get excited.
What is it?
Well, I'm about to tell you. Oh, high of 67.
Oh.
That is, have I ever told you that I think the perfect temperature is 65 degrees?
Well.
To be honest, more like 63.
Oh, with a puffy.
Oh, Lordy. You're just from here. You
I'll
don't know.
I'll need a blanket.
You don't know.
Was last night cold enough to kill mosquitoes? Because I sat on my porch yesterday, and I have 18 mosquito bites.
I know it.
It's almost Thanksgiving.
I cannot. Last night it got down to the low 40s.
Oh.
Yeah, I had my air conditioner on. And when I came out this morning, Caleb's here because Thanksgiving, and he's like, you do know that it's freezing in this house, right? I'm like, is it? Anyways, don't worry about it because tomorrow it's going to be back up to 81.
Well, there we go.
What is this life?
I mean, I've worn shorts and a t-shirt on Christmas Day
Yeah,
before,
you're right. Yeah,
so.
I have to. Okay, we've got such an interesting guest today.
Oh.
Wasn't she so fun to talk to?
It was good.
She's like, you're going to love this conversation. It was really fascinating, and her book is fascinating. But before we get to that, let's do a quick little rant or rave.
It's time for Rant or Rave, where we rant or we rave.
Okay, rant or rave for you. New Year's resolutions. Rant or rave?
Rant.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean,
It's a lot of pressure.
there must be a market for it because it comes back around every year. Everyone talks about it.
Yes.
Do you know anyone who actually sets a resolution and follows through for the year?
I am 50 years old, and I have done and kept exactly one New Year's resolution in my entire lifetime. So I'm guessing that by the numbers, the data suggests this is not...
You kept it for a whole year?
I kept it for my life, and it was cooking. One year, when the kids were little, and I was just pissed all the time about the cooking, but they're like in kindergarten. But I was just every day with the cooking, and I didn't know how to cook. Jana didn't teach me. We've talked about that before. So I didn't know how to cook, and it just felt like a burden. And for some reason that I cannot even really explain in hindsight, on New Year's Day one year, I was like, well, hell, is there just anything that maybe I want to do a little better this year? I wasn't even looking for a full overhaul. Just what could I slightly improve on this year? And I chose cooking. I'm like, maybe I can just stop hating it. Maybe I can stop being pissed at preschoolers for being hungry every day. And I mean, I had no cookbooks. I had nothing. I didn't have a knife. I didn't have anything. I was like 100 miles behind. And I just on the spot on January 1st decided I'm going to be a person who figures out how to like cooking. And I started watching the Food Network, and I bought a couple of cookbooks, and I bought a knife, and I just fell in love, clearly. And so that's it. That's my one shining example.
I knew this trajectory
Yeah.
from hating it, but
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was connected to a New Year's resolution.
It makes no sense why. I just decided that day. And it's like I flipped a switch and just went, that's it. People like it. I was paying attention to people going, I love to cook. I love the kitchen. And I'm like, they can't all be wrong. Like, what am I doing wrong?
Well, maybe that's the secret, is tackling something that you want to change your heart towards. You want to change not your attitude, but
Kinda.
like
Your
work towards
experience of it or whatever.
work towards acceptance and experiencing it in a different way, rather than like, I'm gonna walk 3.5 miles every day.
I mean, I've said that shit before.
I've said it. I don't even last 24 hours.
Same. You know, I'm not good at these things that take every day. My anytime I start a system, you know, it's a new system, and I used to do this a lot with the kids. Like, here's our new system. It involves screen bucks or whatever I read that week, and here's our new chalkboard chore wall.
Yes, the chore chart.
The chore chart. Like, I usually made it around 11 days.
Yeah.
That was about my lifespan.
I think maybe like the hack I can do is like maybe February, look back and find something that I've had a better attitude about, and then write
claim
that,
it.
claim it,
I see what you're saying.
put a little check mark next to it, and then I'll be successful.
Because you didn't really have to try. You accidentally stumbled into doing it a little better or whatever.
I just was a better person in this one tiny facet. And then,
oh, I see what you're saying. Like, you know what? For 2025, you could be like, my New Year's resolution for 2025 is to like add a new, you know, part-time career. But you've already done it.
but I've already done it. See, I change it from Rant to Rave.
Oh, okay. I let's just use it how we want to. Like, manipulate it to suit us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have one for this. Do you have anything?
No, I'm going to examine what I've done well in January,
Yeah.
sometime in February.
Yeah. Oh, I kind of like that.
Yeah. And then I'll be like, oh, look at you.
Yes.
Good
Yes,
job.
I like that, because I find my energy is the exact opposite of New Year's resolution, which is like, you know, new year, new you. That makes me pissed and exhausted. I'm tired just hearing that. Just saying those words made me feel tired. I want to cave.
Yes.
I want to cave. Like, I want the blanket over my little head, and I want movies, and I want to be quiet, and I only want candlelight, and I don't want new me anything.
No. It's the wrong time of year for it.
No, it is the wrong time of year. A couple of years ago on this show, I had a guest. I'm going to look at Catherine. I'm going to tell you this, and it's important because we'll put a link so everybody. Catherine May. She wrote a book called Wintering. Oh. And it's everything our souls have ever wanted. Oh. It's about we're wintering, we're nurturing in our little souls and our little hidey holes. Like, for introverts like us, it's everything we've ever wanted to hear.
Yes.
That
This
is
is
winning.
what I need. You know, when I could maybe think of setting a goal is that first weekend in the spring where you roll your car windows down.
That's different. That's different energy.
That's when you were like, you know what? I'm going to try better.
That's right.
In this one thing. And then you have momentum. You've got the
Yes.
windows down and the music
We're
on.
in lockstep with the seasons.
But January 1st?
Stop it.
No.
The bears are asleep in their caves. It's not the time.
Same.
The other time, I will say, I can get on board with the rhythms of the year, and I think we're connected to the earth. I'm kind of woo-woo like that. So I feel like we have something innate in us when the earth is coming back to life, that we're also like,
Seasonal. Something seasonal.
let's get the dustpans out.
Yes.
But I feel the very deep sense of that. I don't have this anymore because it's in my rearview mirror. But when the kids go back to school, when the kids go back to school, I swear to God, I am my best self for at least 11 days. I mean, truly. Like,
Well, homeschoolers feel differently.
oh my God. That is, how could I have just said that to you? That must have fallen so flat to your ears.
It's a little hateful, but
Yeah, you're
not
right.
that homeschooling's a bad idea, but we don't have the same seasonal rhythm.
No, I know you don't. Okay, well, just forget I just said that. But what I'm saying is, for those of us who just send our kids to like shitty public school and let our taxes do the job, when they all leave the house at 7:30 in the morning that first Monday, jeez.
I think for homeschoolers, it's when you finally give up on the curriculum you've chosen that year.
When would you say that is in the year?
Well, I mean, every family's different, but
What about yours?
well,
I'm asking.
typically like spring break.
Okay, Hell, that's the same for regular teachers in a classroom.
I could make it that far. And then you're like, you know what? Life is education. Anyway.
Go outside and look at the sky, and you're learning about the earth.
Listen, you know my
clouds.
kids spent a lot of time
No,
outside.
I really do know that, to be honest. They went to like rock school or whatever the weird things you found were.
It's outdoor school, survival school.
Okay. All right, let's do one more before we bring on Joy.
Okay.
Let's do culture shock. Okay, this has obvious connections to our guest today, who was on a mega hit from the early 2000s. Mega, like a super hit. She was on One Tree Hill. And so this is going to be interesting between me and you. Let's talk about our favorite shows from the early 2000s. Now, tricky for us, because I had a baby in 1998, 2000, and 2002.
And I started in 2002.
We were in the weeds.
Yeah.
I mean, by 2002, I had 3 kids 4 and under.
Man.
So almost every show that was hot, I watched in the last 10 years. Like I found it on Netflix and then I binged it, like Gilmore, like Parenthood, West Wing, all of those. I watched in their entirety a decade after the last episode aired.
Got it.
What did you watch in real time?
In real time, I watched the crime shows, like CSI.
Oh my God, CSI was so hot when it first hit the scene.
And we DVR'd it.
Yes.
Like by that time, we weren't watching commercials.
That's true.
Criminal Minds. I did watch a
Criminal
little.
Minds, did you watch that? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I know. I watched a little bit of Grey's, but
Oh God, so did I. I'll rope
what?
that one in.
I mean, I think they killed Denny in season 2, and
I watched that episode live, like in real time.
yeah,
I had to
was
go to
real
bed.
mad, but I kept watching it for a couple more years, but never got over it. I'm still mad. I won't watch it.
There's a meme going around. I know that you don't scroll on Instagram like the most dysfunctional among us do, but there's a meme going around that just has Denny, he's dead, she's in the prom dress, she's laying over him in bed, and what's his name comes and scoops her up and carries her out. And they're just like, tell us where you were when this happened. It's like it imprinted that badly on our generation.
The worst.
What was her character's name? Katherine Heigl's?
Izzy.
Izzy. Oh my gosh.
And I watched West Wing
Oh my God.
in real time.
Don't you think that was maybe one of the best shows that has ever been done?
Yes.
Am I being dramatic?
No. I mean, no more dramatic than The West Wing.
Oh my
So good. So
I loved those were some good years.
They were. It was good TV.
That was good TV. We had less options, which the argument can be made, are we better or worse? But something about the shows that made it had to be so dialed in because there were just less places for shows to live. Mm-hmm. So the ones that were on TV had been run through the ringer and found like entertaining, and they were just like, I'm looking at this little list from this time, The Sopranos. That's the one show I think I watched in real time at the time. Lost, One Tree Hill, of course, Gilmore.
24.
24 was so good.
I didn't watch it.
Watched it later. West Wing, Monk. Did you ever watch Monk?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I love him.
That was my parents' favorite show.
And also, we apparently had the capacity at this point and through our whole childhood to watch a show weekly, multiple shows, like your Monday show, your Tuesday show,
that's right.
and remember what had happened. And now, like with streaming, like there's some Apple shows that, they come out once a week. And if I accidentally start watching it before every episode is released and I get to episode 3 and it tells me I have to wait 4 days, I'm like, How am I going to remember all of these plot twists?
Absolutely same.
You want me to wait a week?
What is this? What are we in prison?
I cannot. My attention span is not up to par. My memory is not up to par. I will quit a show and then go back like 2 months later.
So that you can watch it all at once.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. And even worse is when you start watching a show and somebody's told you about it and you start loving it, and then you get like past the 3rd episode and it's like you didn't know that you didn't have the whole show.
Right.
Like it's a surprise that they didn't upload all the episodes, and it's like comes out, next Thursday. Forget it. Just forget it. I want to forget I ever started it. I'll watch it next year. Okay. Speaking of shows, an absolute banger of a show during this time season was One Tree Hill. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was like everybody watched One Tree Hill. All those like young actors just galvanized this whole kind of new type of TV show.
Was it on the CW?
CW, and it was like, help me think of the other ones that were kind of their competitors. Dawson's, that's what I was trying to reach for right there. Dawson's Creek, like, it was such an exciting time for that kind of like young adult drama. Mm-hmm. And so we have one of the lead actors on One Tree Hill with us today, but she is with us talking about a deeply personal, really riveting story that was unfolding during her One Tree Hill years. So we have Bethany Joy Lenz on today, and she goes by Joy. So she's an actor, she's a singer-songwriter, she's a director. If you watched One Tree Hill with the rest of America, you will know her as Haley James Scott. And she was in 9 seasons on One Tree Hill. What kind of shows get 9 seasons now? Almost none. So she began her career like on Guiding Light. Delightful. My grandma would absolutely approve. Bring It On Again. And then she even showcased her musical chops on One Tree Hill. So she's written a memoir called Dinner for Vampires. And in it, she details her 10-year experience in what she calls the Big House Family religious cult. And she joined that cult at the beginning of her One Tree Hill debut. So these kind of dovetailed together. These two pieces of her story were happening simultaneously. And so this book very candidly explores her marriage and divorce from the cult leader's son, her castmates' concerns about her at the time and how she perceived those, red flags coming in from her community, and then her eventual escape with, interestingly, and she'll talk about this, the help of a pretty devoted One Tree Hill fan.
Yeah.
And so it reads like fiction. It is riveting and fascinating and traumatizing and courageous and just a fascinating story. So outside of acting, Joy is an independent musician. She's a theater performer and has been for a long time, and she is a philanthropist. And so I found her absolutely delightful.
She was amazing.
Amazing. And this conversation could have gone on and on. You'll ultimately find this very hopeful. So if those of you are thinking, this feels heavy and dark, hang in, because she kind of takes us through the whole arc and what like a beautiful, real, authentic, curious, lovely faith she has ended up with.
Yeah.
And so this is worth hanging on till the end for sure. And so Amy and I are delighted to welcome Bethany Joy Lenz to the For the Love podcast. Joy, welcome to the show. We're just both absolutely delighted to meet you.
Thank you so much. I feel the same. It's a pleasure.
Welcome.
You look fantastic. Let's start here because this is so very recent, and we just kind of like everybody else just sort of saw the loss of your friend, Paul.
Yeah.
Paul Teal. It just happened, and he was so young. He was just a baby. And so we just,
35.
I'm so sorry and so sad. We would just love to hear like we'd love to hear what maybe your favorite thing about him was, or a favorite memory you had with him, or something that like you'll always just kind of treasure up about Paul and your relationship with him.
You know, it was one of those relationships where we worked together so closely for a short period of time. And then we would talk every couple of years. Like we would just spend a little time chatting, but it was not, I wasn't in his world on a day-to-day basis the way I wanted to. And I was obviously, if you read the book, you'll know there was a lot going on in my life at the time when I did know him very closely. And it was one of those relationships that like, you just always think you have time. You always think like, oh yeah, I love Paul. We'll catch up next time I'm in town. Oh, I missed him this time. Oh, I'll send him a text and we'll catch up next time. And you do that for long enough, and I went back and looked, and the last interaction we had via text was like a couple of years ago. I was like, oh my God, how is that possible? And it just breaks my heart because I wanted to be and maintain a closeness so much more than I did. And so going back to Wilmington and being around his beautiful family and fiance, and seeing friends that had grown up with him in the theater community there was really great for my heart, and great to hear their stories about him. I just to give you a note about Paul's personality, when we did the Notebook, I created the idea of the Notebook musical, which I write about in the book a bit, and that was in 2008, maybe 9. And Paul played Noah in my musical version of The Notebook. And there's a scene where he's supposed to walk up to Kendra Gehring, who was playing Allie, and he gives her an ice cream cone. It's in the pursuing stage, and he's trying to win Allie's heart. And he hands her an ice cream cone, and she grabs it, and she takes a lick, and then turns it upside down and smacks it into his palm. Well, the last performance, Paul had gone, I guess, to the to the dollar store or something, and he bought a whole bunch of tops, like plastic ice cream scoop tops.
Oh my
so it made the cone like a foot tall or more. And he hands it, he pulls it out from behind his back and hands it to her on stage. And she's just sitting there on stage with this enormous ice cream cone. And, you know, true to Kendra, just licks it from top to bottom all the way up, and then turns it over, puts it in his hand. You know, the audience loved it. But
that's amazing.
He was mischievous. He was a prankster. He loved, pushing buttons and seeing what would happen. He was a really curious, open-hearted, generous guy, and his memory will live on forever. And I'm just so grateful to have known him for the short time that I did.
Wonderful.
Thank you for that. I love
Thanks
that
for
story.
sharing that. We, of course, want to talk about your book, Dinner for Vampires.
She is.
The title is so evocative.
I know, I love it.
Can you share its significance and how it relates to your experiences?
Yeah.
Sure. I think for ages, vampire has been synonymous with narcissist. It's an energy sucker, a blood sucker, a life force sucker. And so for me, it became quite obvious that, metaphorically speaking, I had become dinner for vampires. It's a metaphor for narcissistic abuse and what happens when you become the food supply for another person. Or the energy supply.
Yeah.
Dang.
Identity supply, all those things.
I was just telling Amy and our producer Pepper on with us right now that I really like your writing style. I love the way that you tell a story, and I love the way that you sort of sometimes use spare details, like just enough to drop in a banger of a sentence, but then you just let it be, you just let it lie. You're really good at it. But I'm curious because this is a hard story, and one that is largely hidden from your watching audience, of course.
Yeah.
So this is, for most people, news. This is news about your life and about your story, and writing it, just going through all these cycles of abuse and trauma and isolation and gaslighting and all of the cocktail
Yeah.
of dysfunction, really, that you were immersed in had to have been hard. I'm assuming this was hard to write. Was it? Did you find the process of going backward and excavating through all your journals and calling everybody else to fact check and running it? Was this hard, or was it cathartic, or was it both?
It was both, and it was relieving, and it felt really healing. As I mentioned before we started rolling, I was just having a breakfast with someone who used to be in the group with me, and it's amazing how, as we talked, this person was mentioning that they haven't read the book yet, and it's still kind of a jumble in their mind of what they went through. And I was like, you know what, actually, that's one of the major things that was so helpful to me about writing the book was taking this spaghetti bowl in my brain of all the threads, of all the things that happened that I had been dissecting in moments over the last 10 years in therapist's office, in my own time journaling, in my prayer time, just taking little bits and pieces and trying to dissect and connect them. But to have an excuse to really sit down and just literally chronologicalize, that's probably not a word, my journals and tab them all and post-it note them and year by year and then event by event, and to be able to see how everything happened in a linear way made so much more sense out of it. It actually gave me so much more grace for myself. It helped alleviate the shame, because I don't know how you guys feel. I mean, how do you feel about shame? Like when you encounter a moment when you're like, oh God, I don't want to think about that. Do you go into it and spend time dissecting it, or do you like avoid it and just, I don't want to think about it. I'll
absolute avoidance if I can. I will outrun it. I will outwork it. I will shove that thing into a drawer and lock it with a key if I can. But of course, that drawer always bursts open. It doesn't stay shut. And so that is the problem.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I had the distinct opportunity, and between that and simultaneously doing my One Tree Hill rewatch podcast, Drama Queens, that where I have to show up every week and watch the young version of myself who was going through all of these things, and watch her week after week after week. And I mean, I really was just, the Lord was just like, I'm just going to completely throw you into the fire right now. We're going to just hash all the rest of this out. Like anything you haven't really sorted through, anything you still have shame about, let's just bring it all to the surface. So writing the book felt really healing. I'm so grateful I was able to see it all laid out in a row. I feel much more like, oh, it's actually reasonable that I would have believed all of these.
That's right.
Pieces of manipulation step by step. I'm not an idiot.
No.
Okay.
Right.
You were just groomed like many before you and many elsewhere.
I was 20.
Yeah, you were just a baby. Right, of course.
Yes.
You describe being drawn to the group because you had a desire for community and spiritual guidance, and you've said the controlling nature, the high controlling nature, sort of unfolded over time. Looking back, as you laid it all out chronologically, what are those early warning signs that you missed?
Or that you knew, but you shoved down? Those little internal red flags where you go, that doesn't feel great, but then you talk yourself out of it.
Yeah. Let's see, let me get my mic a little closer. The warning signs, I mean, that is what's hard about it, is when, especially when you're that young, very few people, I think, grow up being taught how to spot gaslighting and narcissistic abuse. It's not something that you walk into the world being like, everybody's going to take advantage of me, so I got to really pay attention to how that, I mean, I didn't even know what those words were or meant.
Right.
So I would have had no way of knowing. That's why the coercion is just so insidious, because you think it's love, and that's the nature of manipulation.
Of course, especially when it's packaged with God.
Especially.
Yeah.
And when you're somebody who's already had experience with God, personal experiences, and then experiences in church, when something looks adjacent
Yeah.
to what you've been experiencing, you're like, oh, okay, I can get on board with this. And I still want to be open-minded, and I still want to be flexible, and God is mysterious. I don't want to put God in a box. All good things to feel and think, but in the wrong context or under the guidance of manipulative people. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be talking around your question. I'm not trying to be a politician about this. I just
No.
what's hard is that there were really no warning. I mean, if I was objective sitting on the outside, like warning signs my parents saw that I would have had no way of really seeing at that age, was the isolation, the sense of why do you feel like you can't trust people outside of this small community? What part of believing in your faith, in the truths you hold dear, creates such a sense of fear that you can't listen to other people? You can't take advice from someone who's a different religion, who may have had much more life experience, from someone who's the same religion, who just experiences things differently. I mean, I think I've come to that now. Like, well, truth is truth, so it's cream rises to the top. So there should be no fear whatsoever in having any conversation with any person ever, opening your mind to anything. If your heart is seeking truth, like you're gonna find your way. So it shouldn't be an issue. But at that young age, and I think with a lot of modern Western Christian culture, there's so much fear.
Of course.
Because there's a lack of security around what we believe. Like, we're not taught apologetics, we're not taught to understand what we believe, you just believe it. And so that was part of it too, the sense of blind, unquestioning belief. Like, we're not asking those kinds of questions.
Yeah.
They're illegal.
Of course they
You
are,
have to just
especially
believe.
in an authoritarian sort of hierarchy where
Yeah.
power is a big player. And I think that's still true in a lot of Western evangelicalism, that there's this typically male hierarchy.
Patriarchal,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's patriarchal, of course. And there's baked into the sauce is the idea that your submission to their leadership is faithfulness. Like, that's what
Yes.
obedience looks like. That's being selfless. That is, die to self, others first. The whole kit and caboodle. We grew up like this, so we understand all the language. I loved in your book several times where you're like explaining like a Christian-y idea or
Christianese.
term, and you're like, it's Christianese. I'm like, sis, this is my native tongue. Like, I didn't even need the parentheticals. Like, I know exactly what that means. So we can understand from even a lower buy-in level what it is like to grow up in an environment like that, even, which on the surface looks one way, but then has these sort of catastrophic effects internally and then externally eventually. So I felt
it's so anti-gospel, actually. It's
course.
it's really sad because it's it's kind of the perfect way to get people to avoid Jesus, and is to tap into the pride element of like, great, Jesus, thanks, but also I can do all this myself, right?
For sure. For sure.
So I'll say I've accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and then just do everything else myself, all that I can, follow all the rules, create all of the restrictions, do everything, the submission, the feminine ideals of Western patriarchal feminine ideals of submission and personage that we're expected to be under something that's completely a false doctrine. It's so frustrating.
It is. While you were in this high control group, this cult, you were also starring on One Tree Hill, sort of had this double life. How did you manage to maintain a successful acting career while also being manipulated and living within that small group?
Yeah.
Well, I think it wasn't a successful acting career. I think it was a contract that I got. I got one job. I booked a job like I had booked many before. This job just lasted for 9 seasons.
Yeah.
but it wasn't successful because I wasn't allowed to go do anything else. I didn't take that opportunity to go shoot movies on my hiatus, or go do Broadway, or go do direct and create my own short films, or anything. Anything else. I did not do anything else. So that's how I balanced it. I just sacrificed my career completely and allowed the opportunity that I had on set on One Tree Hill to be the one safe place that I could really just be myself when the cameras were rolling, ironically, even though I was playing a character. It's like,
No, that makes sense.
there's no boundaries here. I feel free. I can play. Nobody's going to get mad at me for playing most of the time.
But even then, like you mentioned, you talk about how a lot of your castmates had alarm bells going off, that they recognize they're watching you going, feels dangerous, something is wrong, something is off, having hard conversations with you. And so how does that feel? And how did that feel at the time? And how does that feel in hindsight?
At the time, it felt like that very common, again, Western evangelical Christianity concept of persecution.
Yeah.
Opposition means you're on the right track. You must be a good Christian if you're being persecuted.
I know that calculus.
So you start to kind of look for it almost. Maybe you invite it a little bit because it confirms subconsciously, like, okay, I'm a good Christian. I'm on the right track. I'm doing things that make God happy. So the enemy's attacking me.
Yeah.
So there was a part of it that felt like confirmation that I was on the right track, unfortunately. But it also felt lonely.
Yeah, I bet it did.
I felt isolated again. I mean, that's the nature of any kind of narcissistic abuse, whether it's in a group format or in a romantic relationship, or, you can go down the list of all the ways that abuse exists. But ultimately, you don't feel safe with anyone except your abuser, who you definitely don't feel safe with, but it's the one place that, because of the love bombing, you are able somehow to rationalize like moments of imaginary safety. And so that's where I was living, where I was lonely. I was isolated. I didn't trust anyone except the people who were hurting me. And I didn't know how to see that they were the people that were hurting me. I thought I was hurting myself. I thought I was the problem. I'm just in my own way.
Of course.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's so gross because, like, we're all in our own way.
Sure.
Everybody's in their own way
Yeah.
in some capacity or other. So to take something that's a very normal human experience and then twist it and say, no, you're exceptional. That's how in your own way you are. You need us to help you navigate that. And you really can't trust other people because they don't have your best interest at heart. They're not looking out for you. So it felt very lonely. In hindsight, well, I think I just explained. In hindsight now, I see what it was. But it does make me sad, and it's made me really want to be intentional about reconnecting with people. And writing the books made me want to reconnect with people more than I did before as well. I think maybe it's been good. Maybe it's been kind of a kick in the ass that I needed, because I'm such an introvert. I prefer to just bury the story. And, I talked about it with my close friends, but it just lived in my journals on a shelf.
Yeah.
And now that it's out there, it's really like, all right, Joy, put your money where your mouth is. Like, you want to reestablish those relationships. You want to reconnect with people that you missed out on time with. Do it.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I'm working on it.
Love that response. Just real quickly, I'm thinking about the people listening who haven't read this yet. Can you just, from the, a 10,000 foot view, tell our listeners how this even started, how you got into this? Because we of course saw you from over here through our TV screens. Like, she's got it all. She's got it all. Look at her. And so your story, unfortunately, isn't uncommon. So can you talk a little bit about the front door into this space and how it kind of grabbed you by the heel and just really pulled you across the threshold?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, thank you for setting that up. That's great. So Dinner for Vampires is a chronology of gaslighting, manipulation, narcissistic abuse, how that sort of thing, how coercion works, and how you can empathize with it because it's such a slow burn.
Yes.
That most people would not walk into any kind of abusive situation as such and recognize it as such and go, oh yeah, sure, sign me up.
Totally.
Right.
You there are things that appeal to, and narcissists are experts at this. They're like ninjas. They know how to appeal to whatever your emotional void is, whatever
Yes.
the Achilles heel is. And so in my story, I talk about my childhood growing up in the charismatic church. There were a lot of good things, there were a lot of bad things, but I was an only child. We moved around a lot, and I never felt a sense of belonging anywhere, especially because my parents' marriage was tempestuous and they were very young, like 22 when they had me, so young, trying to figure things out, and broke. And so there was a lot of chaos around me, and I wanted a place to belong. And theater really filled that void for a while, except that with theater you move on, like you make close friends for 3 months and then you leave to do another show with other people somewhere else. And so the real sense of stability and family and home that I was longing for, I could never quite grasp it. So when I left New York and moved to LA, I was invited to a Bible study by my roommate, who I love, and she introduced me. She was older. She was 10 years older than me. And so there was also this sense of big sister wisdom. I trust you. You've been through more life experience. And it was about six or 8 months of just young Hollywood professionals getting together, talking about the Bible, talking about God, in a way that felt very artistic, very open and creative and out of the box thinking, exactly the way that I used to think and get strange looks from people at church, like, I don't know if we should be talking about this. Okay, sorry, I'm not allowed to ask questions.
Of course.
So that was really exciting. And I think, oh gosh, I finally found a group of people I can really connect with. And then the mother figure of the group, this woman, Pam, who has many of her own blind spots and needs and issues, as you see as the book unfolds. She and her family invite in a pastor from another state who is currently without a church. He's got a wife and several kids, and he just comes in to give a sermon and talk to this small group Bible study in LA of young Hollywood professionals. And that is the moment everything changed and really started to, the coercion kicked in. And to answer your question about how it grabbed me, and again, it's really what the whole book is, kind of detailing those moment by moment. But the 10,000 foot view, as you asked for, is that he targeted my and many other people's blind spot. Like for me, it was a need for family. And so he presented to me a version of family, his perfect family, and this spiritual group as a safe family. They will never leave you, or no matter what happens, no matter how weird you are, no matter what kind of strange questions you ask, or weird, wild, creative ideas you might have, like, we want to support you, we're here for you, and we're going to help you grow. There's nothing you could ever do to send us away. And that for me was really meaningful. There were other people in the group who didn't have family issues like that, and they needed they needed a sense of a discipline in their life. They grew up with parents who didn't give them any discipline, and they just kind of wandered around. And so the version of his family that they got was vastly different. I never saw arguments within their family. I never saw, it was like the perfect nuclear family. But if I had been not living in North Carolina 9 months out of the year, I would have seen something very different, which I didn't realize till I got out.
Of course.
Man.
Yeah. No, it's precision. It's precision like grooming, truly.
Yes. It seems like a lot of work.
Doesn't it?
I mean,
So much work.
This is probably why he didn't want the group to grow too big. I think he was
For
like,
real.
28 people is like, this is enough. Like, I can't manage manipulating more
That's right.
than 20.
I mean, who am I supposed to be again with this one? Like, this feels tiring.
Which lie did I tell?
That's right.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah, I know.
It's exhausting.
I can't manage my own family that lives here. So I cannot fathom trying to be a different Jen to like 28 different people.
gosh.
Good grief.
What is no?
Well, escaping
Yeah.
a group like this, a cult or a high control group, takes
Yeah.
immense courage. Can you share what the turning point was for you when you realized it was time to leave?
So I get asked this question a lot, and for me, there wasn't one particular turning point, and I think that's probably pretty common for people. I've heard this before for people who've left high control groups or even abusive relationships, that there isn't one particular moment. It starts to, I mean, there's something that is the thread snip, but then it takes a while to pull the thread
Yeah.
out of the sweater and to like completely unravel everything.
Yeah.
So, and usually it's a snag, like you just kind of, and also I appreciate what you're saying about courage, but it doesn't feel like it's a
Sure.
courageous act. It's survival. So there's nothing in it that, I mean, to me, like courage is when you are fully aware of the dangers that lie ahead and you're willing to, like a fireman running into a burning building to grab a baby. That's courage because you know what's at stake. When you are already in the burning building trying to find your way out, it doesn't take courage, it's survival. You're just find me the exit, how do I get out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, courage is like the people in my life who sat by and watched me for 10 years in this group and maintained a relationship with me, as difficult as that may have been.
Wow.
And the people who were there for me when I left,
Yeah.
and they like had the grace to welcome me back into their lives and civilization. But I think, I know for me, the sort of thread that the sort of thread snag moment was becoming a mother. I mean, I think I just there's something about a mother's instincts.
That's
Nobody
right.
can tell you what to do at 2 a.m. when you're feeding your baby. Like
Right.
nobody tells you what the cry means. No, you just have to intuit
Yep.
it.
Yeah.
And I had been disconnected from my gut for
Oh, yeah.
so long,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
long. I mean, honestly, I don't know if I ever was connected. The only place I felt safe connecting to my gut was in acting. When the cameras
Yeah.
were rolling, I trusted myself implicitly. But in real
So
life,
interesting.
yeah, like
Yeah.
even my parents, when they would be fighting, I read about this in the book, and my parents might fight, and then I'd walk into the room and be like, well, what's going on?
Yeah.
Is everything okay?
It's fine.
And it was smiles and, yeah, exactly, everything's fine, it's great. Which I'm not faulting my parents. I think a lot of us do that. We try and protect our kids the best way we know how.
But
Yeah.
that does show you
But-
that you can't trust your own instincts, your own perception,
Yeah.
what your eyes and ears like.
Yeah,
That
I was
seems
used to being
deep.
invalidated.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So being used to being invalidated, it was like, oh, well, once I'm around people who are now invalidating me and telling me I'm crazy and they're right and I can't see clearly, why would I not believe them? That's all I've ever been told anyway.
That's so true.
Right?
Yeah, but motherhood
Yeah, so
jumps
but
it, doesn't it? Like that is,
does.
it's primal and it's an override switch.
Yeah.
Yes. System override.
Yeah.
It was amazing. So just by the grace of God, that system override kicked in
Yeah.
and I went, oh, I can trust myself more than I thought I could.
Good.
This is interesting. And then when I would start feeling guttural reactions that I had been ignoring, I like, I don't like that this pastor, I don't like that he's talking about these other people in our group behind their back. That actually feels kind of funky. Isn't that just gossip? I mean, I know you're saying you're processing, but like, I don't like having information about my friends that I'm not supposed to know. I like knowing that everybody knows everything, and I don't want to have secrets in my brain about somebody that I love and having coffee with, but they don't know that I know this thing about their marriage or what. Like, that's not okay. And I would start to speak up about it and then get squashed.
Of course.
But I'm but I know this is wrong. This is wrong. This is just plain gossip and it's wrong.
Yeah.
And that would lead into the next thing and lead into the next thing. And then eventually the sweater is just
It's in
fully
tatters.
unraveled. Yes.
Can you talk about, or do we may want to keep the lead buried for your readers, but it was you had a fan actually play a role in your
Oh, yeah.
exit strategy. Is that something that you can talk about a little bit?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's. I think it's on the back of the book about how a One Tree Hill fan became this superhero for me. Which is, you can't write it. You know
No,
what I mean?
no.
Like, this is just, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So I met her, and I write about how she came to Idaho for a spiritual conference. You'll read about it in the book, but she came to Idaho. We had an interaction. She met Les, the pastor. They stayed in touch. Cut to a year or so later, she has moved up to Idaho to be a more integral part of this community because they roped her in. Like she had something to offer, and they wanted her to be a part of that. But she was always kind of kept on the outskirts, which meant, and she was raised by a very strong, intelligent woman and a great dad. And so she had a sense of self that I think a lot of us were willing to sacrifice for the sake of gaining whatever that void filler was.
Yep.
Yeah.
She didn't really have that to the same degree that a lot of us did. So they kept her on the fringe, which also meant the combination of her own personal backbone and sense of self, plus not being totally let in, kept her in this space of objectivity.
Yep.
And
Right.
so whenever she was like safe enough, because she was kind of part of the group, so she was someone that we all felt safe enough to talk to. But when we had questions or issues or things when things started to unravel, she became this person that a lot of people started going to talk to because it was like, we trust you because you're not fully the outside world, but you're also not fully committed to things the way that we were. What do you think?
Yeah.
And she was like, well, I mean, it doesn't, I don't want to tell you what to believe, but that seems a little unhealthy to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? But just being a sounding board and letting us process that. And she has this beautiful arc in the story of how she ends up kind of reclaiming a big part of the how do I explain this? She ends up reclaiming a big part of some fundamental important things in the group that were used to be manipulative tools and things that represented a lot of pain. And she is able to come in and redeem a lot of that. And it's just amazing to me.
Yeah.
Like the irony of
Yeah.
the irony of that all.
You've spoken about how the group altered your understanding of faith
Sure.
slowly throughout the whole process. How has your faith evolved since leaving? And how do you view close-knit faith communities now?
My faith has evolved into something that is much more connected to my gut, which feels much more authentic.
Yeah.
I feel a lot more comfortable asking questions, and I really value doubt because, again, the truth rises to the top.
Sure.
So I think God is capable of communicating with all of us when it's the right time, in the right way. I mean, if the gospel shows us anything, it's that God meets us where we are. So I don't feel obligated to try and save anyone anymore. I know it's very Presbyterian of me.
Yes.
But I don't. I don't feel embarrassed to share my faith anymore, which I used to, which is so weird because there's such a pride around it. Like I'm going to save everybody. And
Sure.
It's my job to make sure everybody knows. But it was almost like I would share my faith in this sort of defiant way.
Of course.
Instead of from, right?
Yeah. It's almost offensive. Like we are on the offensive.
So, but I don't, and that was a really big shift for me in coming to this moment where I really just said F you to God. I was so angry. I couldn't believe that after having been such a quote unquote good Christian my whole life, all these horrible things happened to me. Like, God, I thought the deal was I do all the good things, and
Sure.
then you give me a good happy
That's
life.
what you
Right.
brokered after all. Like, that's the contract.
That's
Yeah.
right. Surprise, surprise.
Surprise.
I'm not owed anything. And I'm sorry. And what the freedom in that is that when I don't feel like I'm carrying around a scorecard,
Yeah.
I have so much more empathy. I have so much more peace.
Totally.
I connect with God in really creative, unique ways. I don't feel hostile or afraid of people who are connecting with God from a different religious point of view
Sure.
or a different space in their faith. I believe Jesus is the answer for humanity, and that is what I believe. But I'm not. But I also believe that God is capable of communicating to people when they wants to, and that's I'm not God.
Right.
That is not my job.
Right.
My job is to love. How do I just, for the love? I love it.
Yeah.
Like, how do you just love people?
Yeah.
And that's what I want to do. And so that's sort of where my faith shifted into, is the dichotomy of living in the gray of I have certainty about the things that I believe and I feel strongly about them. And I have so much more love and empathy and compassion and space than I ever did, which seems like they would be polar opposites the way the world does it. But that's why to me, the miracle of Jesus and that freedom and that grace.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I didn't mean to be so long-winded.
No,
about that. I'm
no.
sorry.
Thank you
But-
for answering that so candidly. And I think that is the trajectory as I understand it, which is when I look around at the people that I respect most in a faith space, when I'm looking at their faith and I'm drawn to it and it's nurturing and it feels true and real and good, those are the people who are the most curious, the least afraid, the least controlling, the least manipulative, the least judgmental. Those are the heroes of faith for me. And so I see the trajectory for me moving toward wide tables and clear, free spaces where questions in life and humanity and complexities can all exist, and it's like nothing to be afraid of and nothing to white
isn't it?
knuckle.
I know.
Yeah.
Isn't it beautiful to realize you can learn so much from people who are a different religion? I think so many Christians grow up experiencing this sense of oh, well, you can't take any life advice from that person. They're a Muslim or they're a Buddhist or they're an atheist or I have learned so much from these people, from people who see and experience God so differently from me.
Totally.
Yeah.
All truth is God's truth. And it just comes from,
Yes.
it's so arrogant and silly actually to imagine that the newest kid on the block, Americans, are the ones who've got it sorted. Like, we've got it. We've got the version of it that is the one
We've got the
version.
right way.
After all these millennia, guys, 250 years in, we've nailed it. And so it's actually absurd. It's absurd to imagine that there is not the wisdom of divinity.
The ages.
Ages, everywhere and everywhere else. And it's wonderful to get to that place, having been kind of indoctrinated that you are the savior of, I guess, everyone else.
Yeah.
Right.
insane.
It's my job. I got to convince everybody. I got to save everybody.
Oh, boy.
Curiosity is such a beautiful gift. And I wish that I had spent so many more years of my younger life living in curiosity, which is what artists do. You're supposed to be a curious person when you're an artist. It's like they just squashed it out of me.
Yeah.
But I think the curiosity and the doubt, I just listened to a Tim Keller sermon on doubt. And it was so beautiful, just the idea of doubting Thomas and how I'm going to butcher anything I try and explain from Tim Keller.
Sure, we all would.
Brilliant, but
We all would.
but Yeah, the curiosity, the willingness to say, no, I want to know, I want to understand, not just blind belief. And be the willingness to say, like, if you show me, I will believe. Like, if you make this make sense, then I will believe it. And I think a lot of Christians, I certainly did, live in a space where we think it's very noble to not question God.
Of course.
Yeah.
Like somehow that's going to make God love us more or appreciate us more, or we'll be better disciples or better believers or whatever. But he gave us the brains that we have for a reason.
Yeah.
Like, is he capable of satisfying our intellect or not? So push the
Exactly.
button. Push
Yeah.
the button as hard and
Yeah.
as far down as you
Yeah.
can.
It'll hold.
It'll hold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll hold. Let me just ask you one last question before off you go into your day. I'm thinking about the people listening who are currently in a high control environment, whether it is a faith environment, a spiritual environment, it could be a marriage, whatever it is, all the way up to cult. I don't know what exactly the spectrum is, but this type of controlling, manipulative environment that you've described so beautifully. And they're like feeling that that internal feeling of quickening and whatever. What would you just have them to know? What would you want them to hear you say today? Somebody who finds themselves having handed over the keys to their own agency, their own autonomy, their own instincts, their own sense of internal knowing to somebody else, being convinced that they are incapable of doing it without their leadership.
God is big enough to hold all of you. There's nothing that you can present to God that is going to scare him off. He can handle the worst version of you, the angry version of you, the confused version of you. You don't need other people to hold you. It is very helpful to have community, healthy community.
Yeah.
But the Lord, the Bible, I mean, if this is a Christian church environment that you're in, or something that's revolving around spiritual abuse, the Bible's full of stories of God one-on-one with someone. Job, Moses, Jesus in the desert. I guess he wasn't with himself, but also with Jesus. You don't need to be afraid of just being alone with the Lord. It's okay. If people really love you, if you need space, if you need to walk away for a little while, there is no reason people can't hold space for that and let you go and give you the space. If someone refuses to give you that kind of space or tries to scare you into not leaving for a little while, like, hey, I just need a couple weeks to myself, that's unhealthy. That's weird codependent behavior for somebody to not allow you to have the space that you need. And there's always going to be people, God will always provide people on the other side of stepping away from something unhealthy.
That's right.
He will always provide for you.
Always.
There will always be people there with open arms who see you, and you're not going to be alone. You'll never, even if it's just between you and the Lord for a season, you will never be alone. So fear not, my friend.
Fear not.
That's great.
In wrapping up, what is next for you creatively?
Yeah.
After this deeply personal project,
Yeah.
do you have other stories that you're itching to tell? Are you going to pivot and do fiction?
Yeah.
I think I'll pivot into fiction. I've always written fiction. I love creating something out of nothing, creating a story. I may do another memoir of stories or collection or something at some point in my life, but I think the self-exploration moment was pretty intense.
Yes.
And I would like to I'd like to live in my imagination for
Totally.
a while right now.
Totally.
But I am working on some new music. I've got a song coming out on the 29th. Oh, that's only in a few days. And I have a musical that I'm writing right now, two actually. One for stage, one for screen.
Yeah.
Oh,
I have I would like to create maybe a companion album for the book, not like chapter by chapter, but just sort of songs inspired by moments.
Love
in
that.
the book.
nice.
Yeah, there's no moss growing. I'm busy. And I have a newspaper I run. Modern Vintage News is my newspaper, and it's lifestyle, critical thinking, fun, artistic, broadsheet, open it up like your grandpa and
Love.
read it kind of paper.
Fantastic.
So I'm busy, and I get a kiddo, and it's Christmas. I'm probably going to be knitting and making crafts and all kinds of stuff.
Yep.
So
Yep. Onward.
as you do,
Onward.
I know.
Yes.
Are you
I
guys
love it.
crafty? Do you make things for Christmas? Are you going to be busy with those?
Not crafty.
I have.
No, she's like, ugh.
I've dabbled.
You've dabbled.
I've dabbled, but I lose interest before the project is done.
Oh, and then you shove it into a closet.
Yep.
Well, poo.
But every so often.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for talking so candidly about really probably the deepest parts of your story. And
Sure.
in some ways, the hardest
That's what we're
parts.
here for.
That is what we're here for.
You know
And
what I mean?
and it does
What else are we
serve.
doing?
It does serve other people. It does.
does.
The telling of our stories is it's a gift in and of itself. And so thank you for being willing to do it. I can only imagine how many people are going to read Dinner for Vampires and feel understood and seen, draw courage from your story, clarity, especially as you mentioned, it's spaghetti when you're in it. And so that's exciting to think about how many people you're dropping a line in the water for them to grab. It's not small, and it's really important. And so well done. Well done.
Thank you.
Yep. Well done.
Thank you both. Thank you for hosting me and having great questions. And
Of course.
I just really appreciate what you guys are doing. There's so many great places to grow.
Agree.
This is good.
Agree.
Agree. Okay. Thank you, Joy.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Have a great rest of your
You
day,
too.
girls.
You guys, Dinner for Vampires is worth your time. It was one of those that you'll sit down and start reading, and you're going to lose 3 hours. It just pulls you along. It is such good writing, and I told her that on the interview. Like, oh, you're a good writer. Like, I love the way you tell stories. So, that is everywhere books are sold right now. If you go to jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab, we'll have this whole episode. We'll have show notes and links to everywhere that you can follow Joy and see her work, and obviously places that you can buy a copy of her amazing book and show her some love for really kind of sharing such a vulnerable story with the rest of us, which she did not have to do. But I deeply believe that story will serve people that she may never, ever, ever even know about or see. But I'm really proud of her for bringing this to bear. So, all right, you guys, if you haven't already, subscribe to the show. It'll take you 4 seconds. Just hit follow or add wherever you listen to your podcast, and this will show up in your little library once a week. Because that's what we do. We record it for you once a week. Okay, so that's it, you guys. We love you to pieces, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening.